Coming up today, 7 people have died and 3 others are missing following Typhoon Chaba that swept across southern Korea on Wednesday. The government says it's going to pump an extra $9 billion into the economy, which is still struggling to find its feet. Plus, South Korea and the European Union agreed to turn the screw on North Korea following the regime's recent nuclear and missile provocations. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Thursday, the 6th of October. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. Clean-up operations are ongoing this afternoon after Typhoon Chaba swept through the southern part of Korea on Wednesday, leaving a trail of destruction. At least 7 people died and 3 are missing after the region was lashed by torrential rain and powerful winds. Lee Min-young starts us off.
The Korean peninsula is no longer under the direct influence of Typhoon Chaba, but the southern parts of Korea that were battered by the storm are still grappling with rescue and recovery operations. And more reports on the extent of the damage are still coming in. 3 casualties were reported in Busan. Among them is a construction worker who was killed after a crane toppled over, and an elderly woman who died after falling from the roof of her house. 3 casualties were reported in the nearby city of Ulsan, which was also slammed with torrential rain and powerful winds. The General Insurance Association of Korea reported Wednesday the typhoon caused more than $9 million in damages. More than 500 homes have been flooded and more than 1,600 vehicles submerged. Around 230,000 homes suffered power outages, and dozens of cultural properties were damaged. Almost 200 people from 90 households were forced to evacuate, and they are currently staying at local schools and community centers. Industrial plants were also affected by the typhoon. 2 Hyundai Motor plants in Ulsan and 20 other industrial facilities in the area were forced to suspend operations for a while due to the flooding. The storm, which has been downgraded to a tropical depression, is currently affecting parts of Japan. President Park Geun-hye has called for swift restoration measures to minimize the damage. The government also said it is considering designating the affected regions as special disaster areas. If so, local residents would be able to receive emergency relief and special administrative and financial support from the government. The city of Gyeongju was designated as a special disaster area following 2 powerful earthquakes that hit the region last month. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
A job fair has kicked off to match young job seekers with startups fostered through the government's Creative Economy Drive. Attending the opening event, President Park Geun-hye pledged full support for youth job creation efforts so the newly launched businesses and passionate young people can lead future growth. Let's take a look at what she had to say.
무엇보다 창조 경제와 문화 융성을 통해 청년들이 원하는 ICT, 금융, 서비스 산업 분야의 질 좋은 일자리를 크게 늘려나가고 노동 개혁과 산업 구조 조정을 흔들림 없이 추진해서 우리 경제의 일자리 창출 능력을 근본적으로 강화해 나가겠습니다.
The government has also vowed to provide young job seekers with customized programs offering everything from career consulting to job training. Some 350 startups as well as small and mid-sized companies are anticipated to hire 1,200 young people at the job fair taking place at COEX in southern Seoul. Now, Korea is going to inject more money into its economy by the end of this year to help prop up domestic demand and address some existing uncertainties. Shin Se-min with the details.
An additional 10 trillion won, or nearly $9 billion, will be used to prop up Korea's lackluster economy and minimize the fallout from the downside risks at home and abroad. The agreement between the government and the public sector came during an economy-related ministers' meeting on Thursday morning.
Although there are some positive effects expected from the Korea Sale Festa and the planned budget supplement, there are also growing uncertainties like the Hanjin shipping crisis, the auto walkouts, and the corporate restructuring drive.
He added that the government will work to swiftly implement the remainder of the budget supplement it had already planned to lay out in the fourth quarter, while the central and local governments will inject an additional $5.2 billion by the end of the year. The rest will be allocated to help companies in the public sector like the Korea Electric Power and the Korea Expressway Corporation win large-scale contracts in infrastructure. To boost domestic spending, the government also plans to simplify ways to utilize collected credit card points. Last year's expired credit card points amounted to roughly $120 million, and the government said it'll encourage local card companies to convert the points into cash or services. The government will also seek to invigorate the local tourism business by offering discounts to tourist facilities during a 2-week fall travel campaign that starts later this month. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
A US hedge fund is calling on Samsung Electronics to separate from Samsung's corporate holdings and list itself on the NASDAQ to improve transparency. Elliott Management has released a letter it sent to Samsung's board of directors, arguing the company's overly complicated business structure means its stock is undervalued. The hedge fund is also demanding Samsung Electronics pay a special dividend of $27 billion to its shareholders. Elliott currently holds 0.62% of Samsung's share. However, the hedge fund's motion may have a sizable impact, as more than half of the company's stock is held by foreign investors. This is not the first time Elliott has raised issues with the Korean tech giant. Last year, Elliott attempted to disrupt Samsung Group's efforts to merge Samsung C&T and Cheil Industries. Samsung Electronics says it'll carefully consider Elliott's proposal. Korea's foreign exchange reserves hit an all-time high last month after increasing for the third consecutive month. The Bank of Korea says the nation's foreign exchange reserves totaled over $377 billion as of the end of September. That is up $2 billion from August. The central bank said the increase can be attributed to a jump in profits from foreign currency asset management and interest income, as well as an increase in the amount of non-US dollar foreign currency assets converted into the US dollar. As of the end of August, South Korea was the world's 7th largest holder of foreign exchange reserves. China topped the list with over $3 trillion, followed by Japan and Switzerland. South Korea and the European Union have vowed to work together on all levels to end North Korea's nuclear program. That includes the implementation of existing UN Security Council sanctions, as well as possible independent measures targeting Pyongyang's nuclear capabilities. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Kwon So-ah with the details.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and the European Union's Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini agreed to enforce pressure on North Korea on the bilateral and multilateral fronts. The two diplomats met Wednesday on the sidelines of the Brussels Conference on Afghanistan for talks on the effective enhancement of cooperation to counter North Korea's latest nuclear and missile tests. They agreed that North Korea's 5th nuclear test conducted a month ago highlighted the urgency of the nuclear issue more than ever before. They pledged to work together in all possible respects, which includes cooperation on efforts to craft and implement even stronger UN Security Council sanctions than the ones in effect now. Minister Yoon expressed his appreciation for the EU's efforts regarding North Korea's provocations and asked for greater support through independent sanctions and diplomatic pressure. In return, Mogherini promised to consider more specific measures targeting Pyongyang's nuclear capabilities. The two also agreed to move forward with plans for a South Korea-EU summit next year to further expand their cooperation on global issues. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Lawmakers are on to day 4 of the rescheduled parliamentary audit. 11 committees, including those covering national policy and public administration, are meeting at the National Assembly. Lawmakers from the major parties are covering a variety of matters such as government debt, a drive to reform the prosecution, And a controversy over a farmer who died after being hit by a police water cannon during an anti-government protest last year. Now, the opposition parties have submitted a request to launch a special probe into that incident. To start the process, a majority vote is necessary, but watchers say a disagreement between the opposition and the ruling party over procedural issues could spark another clash. The UN Security Council has unanimously selected Antonio Gutierrez, the former Prime Minister of Portugal, as the next UN Secretary-General. All that remains now is a formal Security Council vote. That is set for Thursday morning local time. Arirang reports.
Portugal's Antonio Gutierrez has received the strong backing of the UN Security Council in his bid to become the next Secretary-General. In a 6 closed-door ballot on Wednesday, Guterres gained 13 encourage votes, 4 of them from the 15-member council's permanent veto-wielding members, and just 2 no-opinion votes. The 67-year-old was the only candidate to top the required 9 encourage votes and received no discourage votes from any of the permanent members. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations, Vitaly Churkin, said Guterres was the clear favourite among all the candidates. Both the American and British ambassadors to the UN also welcomed the result. During the selection process, Guterres said the next UN chief must be a convener, a facilitator, an honest broker and a bridge builder. He also called for a surge in diplomacy for peace to prevent conflicts and crises rather than tackle their consequences. Guterres served as the former UN High Commissioner for Refugees from 2005 to 2015 and former Prime Minister of Portugal from 1995 to 2002. Guterres is set to face a formal council vote on Thursday morning and will then have his name submitted to the 193-member General Assembly for approval. Once confirmed, he will become the 9th UN chief, replacing the current Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon of South Korea, who steps down at the end of this year. Arirang, Arirang News.
Now, in the latest sign of their deteriorating relations, Russia says it's halting cooperation with the United States in the nuclear energy sector. A suspension decree signed by Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev was posted on the Russian government's website on Wednesday. It explained the decree was a countermeasure to Washington's violation of their agreement after the US imposed sanctions on Russia for its role in the Ukraine conflict. The deal, signed 3 years ago, was aimed at jointly developing nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. The US State Department says it has not received notification of the suspension, but would regret Moscow's decision to scrap cooperation on what it believes is a very important issue. The suspension is due to come into effect 90 days after the US delivers its response. 2 police officers have been stabbed in Brussels in what officials say may have been a terrorist attack, according to local broadcaster VRT. 1 officer was stabbed in the neck and another in the stomach at around noon on Wednesday. A 3rd officer that arrived on the scene suffered a broken nose, but none of the 3 had life-threatening injuries. The attacker, identified as a 43-year-old man of Belgian nationality, was shot in the leg and taken away by ambulance. In a statement, the Belgian Federal Prosecutor's Office said, quote, "The provisional results of the investigation indicate that it could be a potential terrorist attack," end quote. This came just hours after the city's Nord station was evacuated due to a bomb scare. Brussels has been on alert after bombings in March that killed 32 people at the airport and at a subway station. In the United States, passengers waiting for their plane to take off were forced to evacuate due to smoke that's assumed to have come from a replaced Samsung Galaxy Note 7 smartphone. According to several media outlets, including USA Today and NBC News, a passenger's Note 7 began popping and smoking Wednesday morning local time aboard a Southwest Airlines plane about 10 minutes before it was set to depart Louisville International Airport in Kentucky. The phone, the owner claims, was a recall replacement. The US Consumer Product Safety Commission is looking into the incident. Samsung Electronics says it'll need more time to determine whether the smoke was caused by the newly exchanged Note 7. A local research team is close to completing whole genome sequencing of a Korean individual, opening up the door for developing new medicine that's suitable for Koreans. Now, whole genome sequencing refers to all the relevant genetic information that affects breeding and the survival activities of human beings. The research team is composed of a domestic biotechnology company, Macrogen, and another team from the College of Medicine of Seoul National University. The team published their research in Nature, an international weekly journal of science. The journal highly assessed the research, saying it provides the most perfect standard of genome sequencing among those that currently exist. Well, that's all we have for now on this Thursday lunchtime here in Seoul. Do enjoy the rest of your day or night, wherever you're watching us, and stay tuned to Arirang TV. We will be back with our next newscast. That's coming up at 2 p.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.